Did you notice what he did? It wasn't just a random photo thrown on the screen. It wasn't an everyday moment captured by chance. That story carried intention, direction, calculation. He knew exactly who would see it. He knew which eyes mattered. And most importantly, he knew your gaze would be among them. The image looked ordinary, but it was anything but. Every element was there to communicate something, even if you didn't want to admit it. The lighting that highlighted his face, the angle that complemented his smile, the object in the background that suddenly held significance for you. It wasn't a coincidence. It was emotional engineering. When he clicked post, he was already imagining what would come next. The notification that you saw it, the time it would take for you to react or to force yourself not to react, the cold calculation of a strategist who knows that silence sometimes speaks louder than 1,000 messages. And if you think he did that without thinking, that's where you're mistaken. People like him don't post for the world, they post for specific targets. And you are one of those targets. Do you see how just by looking you're already in the game? Because it doesn't matter if your finger swiped quickly to the next story. He already knows, he has already seen, he has already measured. And now, you think about him more than you'd like to admit. You wonder if that smile was genuine or a calculated provocation. And deep down you know it wasn't innocent. His mind works like this. He doesn't need to ask how you are. He creates situations that prompt you to reveal, without realizing it, the answer. The silence you keep becomes fuel for him. The lack of a reaction is interpreted as a reaction. The mere fact that you watched, even without liking, is already measured, weighed, interpreted. This is more than ego. It's psychology. It's a silent dance where one provokes and the other tries not to show they've been provoked. The question is, how long will you allow him to control this narrative? Because every time you fall into this game, it reinforces his position. He realizes he can do it, that just one well-placed image can disrupt your day, can make you think about what you didn't want to think about. And the most intriguing part is that, to other people, that story may seem trivial, but not to you, because only you understand what's behind it. Only you see the hidden code. Only you know what that background music means, or that random phrase spoken as if it were nothing. He bets on this. He bets on the fact that you will read between the lines. You'll feel the weight that no one else feels. And even if you fight against it, this feeling is nearly impossible to ignore. Now take a breath. Go back to the scene. Think about the last story he posted that made you pause for a few seconds. You remember what it was. You remember the color, the place, the look. You even remember where you were when you saw it. Why? Because that wasn't just seen, meant it was received. And when something is received, it settles in. Here's the key that many don't realize. Social media isn't about showing off. It's about provoking. Those who know how to play understand that the post is just the first part. The second part happens inside the viewer. And that's where he wants to be, inside your mind, controlling the flow of your perceptions. This is his game. The difference is that now you notice. You see the pattern. And when the pattern becomes visible, it starts to lose its power. But be careful. Recognizing the game doesn't mean escaping it, because curiosity is treacherous. Even when you know you're being manipulated, something in you still wants to see the next move, wants to know what the next bait will be, wants to confirm if this time it's about you. And he knows that. He counts on it. You need to understand, this isn't just a matter of social media. It's about emotional control disguised as casual interaction. He knows that strong emotions, jealousy, nostalgia, curiosity, are the ones that grab attention the most. And that's why he uses each of them as a tool. Is it possible to resist? Yes. But it requires more than just not seeing. It demands an internal repositioning, an understanding that by reacting you feed it, and that by feeding it, you become an active part of its narrative. The issue is that most people don't want to cut that flow, because deep down, even if it hurts, there's still a part that enjoys being reminded, even if it's through an asymmetrical game, even if it's in the form of a poisoned story of intent. Have you ever been through this? Tell me in the comments. Now imagine you resist for days, you don't react, you maintain your stance. Then suddenly they post something that hits your weak spot. It could be a memory of a place you both knew, a song that marked a specific moment, or even an inside joke that only you two understood. And in that instant, your control wavers. Because this isn't random. They're poking at your memory, reigniting emotional connections you thought you had erased. They don't need to send a message. Just dropping that piece on the board is enough, and then they wait. Do you think they don't measure the time? They do. They track who viewed it, in what order, how many times. They observe if, after the post, you shared something too, and whether that something can be interpreted as a response. It's an emotional Cold War. No one declares an attack, but the movements are clear to those who know how to read them. And there's one more detail. When you don't react predictably, they adjust their strategy. They might change the type of content. They might use someone else as a visual trigger. They might introduce elements that provoke questioning. They want you to ask, why did they post this? And the moment that question arises, they've already achieved what they wanted: mental space. Attention is the most valuable currency in this game, and they collect every second of yours. But what if, instead of reacting, you flipped the game, not in an obvious way, not to provoke in the same tone, but to take the narrative control away from them, so that he realizes that it is no longer you who moves according to his dictates, but rather the opposite. This requires strategic silence, calculated moves, and above all, the awareness that, often, true power lies in not delivering the reaction he expects. When you understand this, you start to see that the post is not about whether he is happy, sad, or nostalgic. It's about your awareness, and being aware, getting involved. The danger is that sometimes even the distance can be used as part of the game, because he can turn your silence into fuel for new provocations. And then, you need to go further. Not just control how you react, but also control what you perceive. Filter, reinterpret. This is where the game loses strength. When the image stops carrying the intention he wanted and becomes just another image, but until then, each story is a match, and he plays to win. If this has ever happened to you, comment, "I needed to hear this." What you might not have realized is that his game doesn't end when the story disappears, because for him the story is not the end, it's the seed. From there he observes what sprouts in your mind. He watches your next choices, your next absences. Even what you don't post starts to speak. He doesn't need to be in the same physical space as you to provoke presence. His presence is digital, but the effect is real. He knows that the screen is enough to ignite feelings, and that in times like today, feelings are worth more than proximity. With each post, he sharpens his aim. He begins to understand better what destabilizes you and what goes unnoticed. And when he realizes that something doesn't affect you, he changes course. That is the mark of a strategist, to adapt in order to maintain control. Have you ever wondered why, even aware of all this, you still watch? The answer is not simple. It mixes curiosity with attachment. It blends pride with a silent desire to be remembered. Because even when we know something is manipulating us, there's a part of us that wants to stay connected. And he knows this. In fact, it's exactly why his strategy works. He isn't trying to beat everyone. He's trying to beat you. To others, he may just seem like another user posting his daily routine. But to you, he is the author of cryptic messages. He is the sender of signals that only you interpret this way. And that creates a dangerous bond because it turns the ordinary into something special. You might think you can break this cycle just by stopping your viewing, but it's not that simple, because he knows how to provoke in indirect ways. Maybe he posts something that a mutual friend will comment on with you. Maybe he appears in strategic places where he knows your network will spread the information. He might even drop hints that he's with someone, not to confirm anything, but to make you fill in the gaps. And it's in those gaps that the mind works the hardest. Because when we don't have complete answers, our imagination creates versions. And those versions, even when made up, stir real emotions. This is the most subtle point of his strategy. He doesn't need to reveal everything. Just enough to spark the flame. The rest he leaves for you to complete. That's why so many people get trapped in this cycle. Because there is no closure. There isn't a moment when you can say, okay, it's done. There's always another piece, another signal, another move. And do you know what the risk is? The risk is starting to live reactively. Measuring your own steps based on what he posts or doesn't post. And before you know it, you're no longer living your narrative. You're acting in his narrative. Realizing this is painful, because it requires acknowledging that in a way, you've given him power. And power once given is rarely taken back voluntarily. Whoever controls attention controls emotion. Whoever controls emotion controls decisions. And he learned to manage this with a simple tool, the appearance of casualness. You see, it's not about him writing directly to you. It's not about him sending a private message. It's about creating posts that seem open but are aimed precisely at you, and for the target they sound like arrows. Maybe you remember the first story that made you realize something was off. Maybe it was a random phrase without context, or a photo in a place that held significance for you both, or even a song you listened to together once, which he never mentioned before. In that moment, you felt it couldn't be a coincidence, and it wasn't. The psychology behind this is clear. He knows that memory and emotion go hand in hand. By activating a memory, he reactivates the associated emotion, and thus he rebuilds bridges that you might have tried to destroy. If this has happened to you, comment, "I needed to hear that." Now, notice the mechanics. He chooses something meaningful to you, posts it as if it's just another detail of his life, waits for you to see, watches to see if this changes your behavior. If it does, he reinforces it. If it doesn't, he adjusts, and so the cycle never ends. You might think, but maybe he's not thinking about me, maybe I'm overreacting. That doubt is part of the game, because the game only works if there's uncertainty. Too much certainty kills the tension. Uncertainty keeps you hooked, trying to decipher. He doesn't want direct answers, he wants indirect reactions. He wants to keep you in that state of semi-alertness, where every post might or might not be about you, and even when it's not, you still think about it. The biggest proof that this strategy is effective is simple. How many times have you thought about him after a story? How many times has your mood changed because of something he posted? How many times have you found yourself imagining things that might not even be real? Each of those times was a victory for him, because the goal isn't to convince you of something specific, it's to keep you thinking about it. And here's the trap. When you think about it, even if it's in a negative way, you're reinforcing its presence in your mind. And presence is power, the kind of power that shapes decisions, alters routines, and redefines priorities. To break out of this cycle, it's not enough to stop reacting, you need to stop internalizing, and that means changing the way you perceive each post. Transform the meaning you assign to them. Look and see not just a code, but merely a collection of pixels. But be careful, he can sense when this change occurs, and when he does, he may try to provoke you in more intense ways, maybe using more explicit provocations, maybe using others as pieces on the chessboard, maybe even creating the illusion that he's moving on, just to gauge if it stirs up jealousy. He plays with your vulnerabilities, with what he knows hurts or awakens feelings, with the memories that haven't been processed yet. And here comes a hard truth. As long as those vulnerabilities exist, someone like him will always be able to exploit them. Not just him, but anyone who discovers the way. That's why the real question isn't how to stop him from playing, it's how to stop being affected by it. And that only happens when you take away the value you previously assigned to his every move. The day when the song you listen to together becomes just another song. The day when the phrase that once hurt turns into just another phrase. The day when the image that once triggered you becomes invisible to your emotions. On that day, the game ends. But until then, each story could still be a trap. And every trap is a test to see if he's still in control. Have you been through this? Share your thoughts in the comments. Perhaps deep down you already know he won't stop. Because for someone like him, every interaction is fuel. Every micro-reaction is proof that the game is still alive. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll realize there's a part of you that still expects the next move. Not because you want to go back, but because somehow this cycle has become a habit. And habits are harder to break than relationships. The big turnaround happens when you understand that he doesn't control you. What he controls is the narrative you allow him to build in your mind. And if you change that narrative, you change the effect. He can keep posting. He can keep using every detail as bait. He might even try to raise the stakes, provoking you in more intense ways. But if your perception shifts, his impact dissolves, because his power has always been where you look, not in what he does. And what you choose to perceive is a silent yet definitive decision. Think about this. Maybe he posts something today, expecting your reaction. Maybe he spends the night checking to see if you noticed. Maybe he even imagines your expression while watching. But if you watch and feel nothing, if you watch and go on with your day without carrying his energy, then for him, something has changed. And that change is the only sign that truly matters. Because the game he plays doesn't survive without emotion. And when the emotion dies, the board loses its meaning. What's most curious is that when this happens, It's not you chasing after closure. It's him. He starts to intensify, to seek new ways to get into your mind, to try to reclaim that space he once occupied effortlessly. And it's at this point that you need to be firmer, because if you waver, he notices, and just one slip is all it takes for everything to start over again. Don't confuse this with coldness. It's not about being indifferent out of pride. It's about regaining the control that has always been yours, about realizing that no one deserves to live rent-free in your mind. When you decide to end this permission, you discover something liberating. His silence stops bothering you. His presence stops mattering. And even his provocations lose their flavor. Hey, the only reaction left for him is to deal with the absence of effect. And for someone like him, the absence of effect is the hardest hit. Because deep down, he was never just interested in attention. He wanted influence. He wanted the power to guide your perspective, your mood, your decisions. And when he realizes that this is over, the game changes hands. If this has ever made sense to you, drop a comment saying, "The game is over." But I want you to hold on to one last image. Imagine that each of his stories is a stone thrown into a lake. The lake is your mind. In the past, each stone created massive waves, waves that distorted the reflection of your own life. Now picture that this lake has become still, that each stone he throws sinks but doesn't create waves. The reflection remains clear. Nothing distorts anymore. This is the state you need to achieve. Because in the end, it's not about him stopping his posts. It's about you stopping being affected. And when you get there, his presence becomes just another irrelevant point in the landscape. And it's on that day that the game is over for good, not because he gave up, but because you won. If this resonated with you, the next video will resonate even more. There I'll show you how to recognize anyone who uses social media as an emotional weapon, and how to break that cycle before it begins. Click here and keep going with me.